Picture this: a Roman emperor fighting as a gladiator in the Colosseum, convinced he's the reincarnation of Hercules. Another emperor tries to make his horse a government official. And one poor guy gets assassinated while literally taking a bathroom break during a war campaign. Welcome to the wildest political story ever told, the complete saga of all 80 Roman emperors who ruled for over 500 years. We're talking about the ultimate mix of military genius and spectacular madness, family drama that makes reality TV look tame, and enough backstabbing to fuel 1,000 Netflix series. From Augustus, who built the greatest empire in history, to little Romulus Augustulus, who watched it all crumble. Each of these rulers shaped our world in ways we still feel today. So hit subscribe if you're ready for the craziest history lesson you've ever heard. And let's dive into 5 centuries of absolute power, absolute corruption, and absolutely unforgettable characters. Stay tuned for this long but definitely binge-worthy series as we walk together the whole show in 8 continuing episodes. This will be the first episode with the first 10 Roman emperors. Let's kick things off with the man who started it all, Emperor number 1, Augustus. This political genius ruled for an incredible 45 years, from 27 BCE to 14 CE, taking power at just 18 years old and holding on to it until his death at 75. He transformed Rome from a war-torn republic into the greatest empire the world had ever seen, and somehow made it look easy. Born just plain old Gaius Octavius, he was only a teenager when his great-uncle Julius Caesar got stabbed to death in the Senate. Caesar left him everything in his will: his name, his money, and a whole lot of enemies who really didn't want some kid running around claiming to be the new Caesar. But this wasn't your average teenager. He outmaneuvered seasoned politicians like Mark Antony and Lepidus, proving that sometimes youth and cunning beat experience and muscles. His masterpiece was the sea battle at Actium in 31 BCE, where he defeated Mark Antony and Cleopatra in what was basically the ancient world's version of a superhero showdown. This victory ended the Roman Republic forever and began the Empire. Augustus spent decades carefully building what he called the Principate, keeping all the old Republican offices around like decorations, while he held all the real power behind the scenes. The guy was a master of political theater. He claimed he wanted to give power back to the people, while quietly making sure he controlled the army, the money, and basically everything that mattered. He rebuilt Rome's infrastructure, created the world's first professional police and fire departments, and established a system of government that would run the Mediterranean world for centuries. Augustus died peacefully in 14 CE, allegedly joking, "Have I played the part well? Then give me your applause as I exit," though this was probably too perfect to be true. His 45-year reign created the Pax Romana, 2 centuries of relative peace and prosperity that people still talk about today. The man who claimed to have found Rome made of brick and left it made of marble had done something even more impressive. He'd created a system of government that could survive his death and keep running the world. After Augustus's brilliant performance, next up is Emperor number 2, Tiberius, the guy who really didn't want the job. This reluctant ruler took power at age 54 in 14 CE and spent the next 23 years on the throne until his death at 77, making him the poster child for ancient Rome's most successful case of fake it till you make it. Tiberius was Augustus's stepson, who got stuck with the job after all the emperor's preferred heirs died young, which happens suspiciously often in Roman families. He was actually a brilliant military commander who had conquered parts of Germany, but he had all the charisma of wet cardboard and the personality of someone who'd rather be literally anywhere else. Think of him as that capable co-worker who gets promoted to manager and spends every day wishing they could go back to their old job. His early reign was actually pretty competent. He balanced the budget, kept the borders secure, and didn't start any unnecessary wars. But then things got weird. In 26 CE, he basically rage-quit Rome and moved to the island of Capri, running the empire through strongly worded letters while reportedly indulging in activities that Roman historians had very colorful imaginations about. Back in Rome, his absence created a power vacuum that the ambitious praetorian prefect, Sejanus, tried to fill by basically staging a slow-motion coup. When Tiberius finally figured out what was happening, he had Sejanus executed along with his entire family and most of his supporters. This purge made him even more paranoid and isolated, turning his later years into a reign of terror conducted by mail. When he finally died in 37 CE, possibly smothered by the praetorian prefect who got tired of waiting, Romans literally celebrated in the streets. They chanted, "Tiberius to the Tiber," wanting to throw his body in the river like garbage. Harsh? Maybe, but this reaction showed how his later years of paranoid rule had completely destroyed the goodwill Augustus had built up. Despite being wildly unpopular, Tiberius left the empire richer and more secure than he'd found it. Sometimes the best rulers really are the ones who least want the job. But his death would bring to power someone who definitely did want to be emperor, and that would be a very different kind of problem.
From the guy who hated being emperor to someone who loved it way too much, meet Emperor number 3, Caligula. This certified lunatic took power at just 24 years old in 37 CE and packed enough crazy into less than 4 years to earn a permanent spot in history's Hall of Fame for imperial insanity until his assassination at age 28 in 41 CE. Born Gaius Caesar, he got the nickname Caligula, Little Boot, as a toddler when he wore tiny military deer around his father's army camps. The soldiers thought it was adorable. They wouldn't have been so amused if they'd known this cute kid would grow up to declare himself a living god and allegedly try to make his horse a government official. At first, Romans were thrilled to have someone young and energetic after Tiberius's gloomy final years. Caligula released political prisoners, put on amazing games, and generally acted like the fun emperor everyone wanted. But then his behavior went completely off the rails. He started demanding to be worshipped as a god, built a temporary bridge across the Bay of Naples just so he could ride across it in triumph, and once made senators run alongside his chariot for miles in their formal robes just because he could. The guy burned through money like it was going out of style, bankrupting the treasury on pointless construction projects and increasingly bizarre spectacles. He'd force audiences to watch him perform and had guards prevent anyone from leaving during his concerts. Imagine being trapped in a karaoke session with an armed crazy person who thinks they're the next Elvis. His reign of terror ended abruptly in 41 CE when a group of Praetorian guards led by Cassius Caria cornered him in a palace hallway and stabbed him to death. The conspiracy involved multiple senators who'd simply had enough of his unpredictable cruelty and megalomaniacal demands for divine worship. Caligula proved that absolute power plus mental instability equals disaster for everyone involved. His death left Romans wondering if maybe this whole emperor thing was a terrible idea. But they were about to discover that sometimes the most unlikely candidates make the best leaders.
After the Caligula disaster, here comes the most unlikely emperor of all. Number 4, Claudius. This stuttering, limping scholar became emperor at age 50 in 41 CE and ruled for 13 years until his death at 63, proving that sometimes the person everyone overlooks is exactly who you need in charge. Claudius was Caligula's uncle, a guy everyone in the imperial family dismissed as the weird bookworm with physical disabilities, who spent his time writing histories that nobody read. When the Praetorian Guards went on their killing spree and murdered Caligula, they found Claudius hiding behind some curtains in the palace, probably hoping everyone would forget he existed. Instead, they declared him emperor almost as a joke. He was the last adult male in the family, so why not? Turns out the joke was on everyone else. This simple-minded scholar conquered Britain in 43 CE, finally finishing what Julius Caesar had started a century earlier. He didn't just send armies, he personally sailed to Britain and led the victory parade, showing that all those years reading military histories had actually taught him something about warfare. Claudius also revolutionized Roman society by expanding citizenship, building incredible infrastructure projects like new aqueducts and the harbor at Ostia, and reforming the legal system with an efficiency that made previous emperors look like amateurs. He proved that sometimes having a disability means you work twice as hard to be twice as good. His personal life was less successful than his public achievements. His third wife, Messalina, was executed for essentially committing treason by marrying someone else while still married to the emperor, which was either incredibly stupid or incredibly bold. His fourth wife, Agrippina, allegedly poisoned him with mushrooms in 54 CE, reportedly leading Claudius to joke that mushrooms were the food of the gods, since they made him one. The emperor, who everyone thought was too weak to rule, had transformed Britain from a collection of Celtic tribes into a Roman province, expanded the empire's boundaries, and shown that intellectual curiosity could be just as valuable as military glory. But his death would bring his stepson Nero to power, and that kid had some very different ideas about what emperors should do with their time. From the scholarly Claudius to history's most infamous performer-emperor, meet number 5, Nero. This walking disaster became emperor at just 16 years old in 54 CE and spent the next 14 years turning imperial politics into deadly theater before his suicide at age 30 in 68 CE. Born Lucius Domitius Ahenobarbus, Nero became emperor through his mother Agrippina's marriage to Claudius and some suspicious mushroom-related incidents. Initially guided by the philosopher Seneca and Praetorian prefect Burrus, young Nero actually showed promise, until power, paranoia, and a serious case of artistic delusions corrupted him completely. His greatest hits include murdering his mother Agrippina after multiple failed attempts involving a collapsing boat that she survived by swimming to shore, executing his first wife Octavia to marry his mistress Poppaea, and the Great Fire of Rome in 64 CE. While he probably didn't fiddle during the fire, fiddles hadn't been invented yet. He definitely used the disaster as an excuse to build his massive Golden House palace, leading to rumors that he'd started the blaze himself.
But Nero's real passion was performing. He forced audiences to watch him sing, act, and recite poetry, with guards making sure nobody could leave during his interminable concerts. He competed in the Olympics and won every single event he entered, including a chariot race where he fell out of his chariot and didn't even finish. Apparently, being emperor meant never having to actually win to get first place. His downfall came through military rebellions across the empire, triggered by his completely delusional belief that he was an artist first and emperor second. When reality finally caught up with him in 68 CE, he committed suicide while allegedly lamenting, "What an artist dies in me," which is probably the most Nero thing he could have said. His death triggered the year of 4 emperors as the empire descended into civil war over who would replace him. Nero had proven that individual incompetence really could destroy decades of careful institution building, and now everyone with an army was about to try their hand at being emperor.
Enter the first casualty of the post-Nero chaos, Emperor number 6, Galba. This elderly senator took power at age 73 in June 68 CE and managed to get himself killed just 7 months later in January 69 CE, proving that sometimes being first to rebel doesn't guarantee lasting success. Galba was a provincial governor in Spain who declared himself emperor after Nero's suicide, marching on Rome with promises to restore fiscal responsibility and moral order after years of Neronian excess. At 73, he was one of the oldest people ever to become emperor. Imagine your grandfather suddenly deciding he wanted to run a global superpower. He had decades of military experience and a reputation for strict discipline, which sounded great in theory. Unfortunately, his idea of fiscal responsibility meant refusing to pay the Praetorian Guards their promised bonuses, and his version of moral order involved harsh punishments that quickly made him more enemies than Nero had ever managed. His policies were probably necessary, but he had the political skills of a sledgehammer and the charm of a tax audit. The defining moment came when he passed over Otho, a former friend of Nero's, for adoption and succession, choosing instead some random guy named Piso. This decision royally ticked off Otho, who had been sucking up to Galba for months, expecting to be chosen as heir. Hell hath no fury like a Roman politician scorned. His death in January 69 CE was as undignified as his reign had been unsuccessful. Otho's supporters murdered him in the Roman Forum and paraded his severed head around on a pike. The old man's attempts at good government had been undone by his complete inability to manage the basic politics of keeping people happy. Galba's brief reign launched the chaotic year of 4 emperors, proving that good intentions and military experience meant nothing if you couldn't master the art of not making everyone want to kill you. His death brought Otho to power, the same guy whose hurt feelings had started this whole mess.
From Galba's political victim to emperor himself, here's number 7, Otho. This former party boy ruled for exactly 3 months, from January to April 69 CE, making him one of history's shortest reigning emperors, but also one of its most surprisingly honorable, until his suicide at age 37. Marcus Salvius Otho had been Nero's drinking buddy and rival for Poppaea's affections before Nero married her and sent Otho off to govern Portugal as punishment for being too charming. When Galba passed him over for succession, Otho orchestrated the old emperor's assassination, figuring if he couldn't inherit power legally, he'd just take it by force. At 37, Otho seemed perfectly suited for the game of imperial politics and survival. He had connections, charisma, and enough ambition to murder his way to the throne. But his reign immediately faced a massive problem. The Rhine legions had proclaimed their own emperor, Vitellius, and were marching toward Italy with veteran troops who'd been fighting Germans for years. The decisive moment came at the Battle of Bedriacum, where Otho's hastily assembled forces got absolutely crushed by Vitellius's experienced Germanic legions. This should have been the setup for a prolonged civil war, as Otho retreated, regrouped, and fought back with everything he had. Instead, Otho did something that shocked everyone. He committed suicide rather than drag the empire through more civil war. His suicide note reportedly said he wouldn't cause more suffering for Rome just to keep himself in power, which was either genuine nobility or the ultimate guilt trip, depending on how cynical you want to be. Romans were genuinely surprised by Otho's honorable death. Here was a guy who'd seemed like just another ambitious politician, but when it mattered, he chose the empire's welfare over his own survival. His death meant Vitellius could take power without more fighting. But would the new emperor prove worthy of Otho's sacrifice?
Meet the emperor who literally ate his way through the treasury. Number 8, Vitellius. This professional glutton ruled for 8 months from April to December 69 CE, distinguishing himself mainly through legendary food consumption and poor decision-making, before his gruesome death at age 54. Aulus Vitellius was a career politician whose main qualifications were his father's court connections and his own talent for flattery rather than actual leadership skills. The Rhine legions proclaimed him emperor not because he was brilliant, but because he happened to be their governor when they decided they were tired of being ruled by people who'd never seen a real battle. His reign's most memorable feature wasn't military success or administrative reform. It was his eating habits. Ancient sources claim Vitellius consumed 4 huge feasts every day, invented exotic dishes that cost fortunes, and basically turned running the empire into an extended dinner party. He allegedly spent more on food in 8 months than most emperors spent on public works projects in years. While Vitellius was literally eating Rome into bankruptcy, another problem was brewing in the east. Vespasian's legions, fresh from crushing the Jewish revolt, decided they'd rather have a competent military commander as emperor than someone whose greatest achievement was creating a new type of expensive fish sauce. The end came in December 69 CE, when Vespasian's forces crushed Vitellius's armies at the Battle of Cremona. The final insult was that Vitellius was dragged from his hiding place in the palace, tortured by Roman mobs, and killed in the streets before his body was thrown into the Tiber River. A particularly undignified end, even by Roman standards. Vitellius had proven that military backing without personal competence was useless during civil wars. His death finally brought a competent general to power, someone who understood that running an empire required more than just knowing which wine went best with roasted peacock.
Finally, some actual competence. Meet Emperor number 9, Vespasian. who took power at age 60 in 69 CE and spent the next 10 years, until his death at 69, cleaning up the mess left by the year of 4 emperors and proving that sometimes the empire really did need a practical middle-class guy in charge. Vespasian came from a middle-class family in small-town Italy. His father was a tax collector, which was about as unglamorous as Roman careers got. But this provincial nobody had earned his position through decades of faithful military service, most recently crushing the Jewish revolt, while other people were fighting over who got to wear the purple in Rome. His practical achievements were exactly what the empire needed. He restored imperial finances through new taxes, including his famous tax on public toilets. Money has no smell, he reportedly said. Started construction of the Colosseum to give Romans better entertainment than civil wars, and established stable succession by training his sons Titus and Domitian to help him govern. Vespasian was the first emperor from outside the traditional Roman aristocracy, proving that merit could be more important than fancy family trees. His policies were often unpopular, but always effective. He prioritized long-term stability over short-term popularity, which was exactly the opposite of what his predecessors had done. He died naturally in 79 CE, reportedly joking, "I think I'm becoming a god," as he felt death approaching. Romans believed emperors became divine after death, so this was actually pretty funny by ancient standards. His 10-year reign had transformed the empire from chaos back to order through simple competence and hard work. The man who'd risen from tax collector's son to emperor had proven that Rome's greatest strength was its ability to elevate talent regardless of background. His death would pass power to his son Titus, who had already proven himself as a military commander. But would he be able to handle the challenges waiting for him?
From the practical father to the beloved son, here's Emperor number 10, Titus. This popular military hero became emperor at age 39 in 79 CE, but only got to rule for 2 short years before his death at 41, earning the nickname Delight of the Human Race, despite his tragically brief reign. Titus had already proven himself as a military commander by capturing Jerusalem in 70 CE during the Jewish War, bringing massive wealth back to Rome and establishing his reputation as someone who could actually win battles. His relationship with Jewish Queen Berenice had caused some scandal. Romans worried he might marry her and create a foreign influence problem. But his military success made people overlook his complicated love life. His brief reign faced immediate disasters that would have broken lesser leaders. Mount Vesuvius erupted in 79 CE, burying Pompeii and Herculaneum under tons of ash, while fires and plague hit Rome itself. Instead of hiding in his palace, Titus personally supervised relief efforts, opened his own home to refugees, and spent imperial money freely to help disaster victims. The crown jewel of his reign was completing and dedicating the Colosseum, with 100 days of spectacular games that showcased Rome's wealth and power. These weren't just entertainment, they were employment programs for actors, gladiators, and stage crews, plus free fun for citizens who'd been through some rough years recently. His sudden death from fever in 81 CE genuinely devastated Romans, who'd finally found an emperor who combined military skill with personal generosity and actually caring about regular people's problems. People mourned him like they'd lost a beloved family member, which was pretty rare for emperors.
Titus had shown that short reigns could still be transformative when emperors focused on actually helping their people rather than just accumulating power. His death would bring his younger brother Domitian to the throne, and that transition would prove that being related to a great emperor didn't automatically make you one.
And that was the story of the 10 Roman emperors for today. If you've enjoyed what you've seen so far, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button. And stay tuned for the next episode of 10 Roman Emperors on our channel, Drowsy Rome.